Hi, and welcome to today's episode of pianoTV. I wanted to sit down and chat with you guys about grade 3 piano. So the RCM and the ABRSM are the two major grading systems that are in the world. The RCM is as far as I know, mainly North America and Europe and England, whereas the ABRSM is more global. So what we're going to do today with this grade 3 talk through is we're going to go through all of the different requirements at a grade 3 level. So we're going to talk about the piece requirements, we're going to talk about the technique, the ear, the sight reading, and all the little details that you're kind of expected to have figured out at this level. So let's just get started. So grade 3 piano generally corresponds with your 5th year of piano if you're a kid. I mean, oftentimes it's the start of the 3rd year if you're an adult. It really just depends on how hard you work. So grade 1 and grade 2 and the preparatory levels are all about the beginner stages. You learn how to read notes and rhythms with increasing complexity. So once you finish this level, you should be pretty comfortable with, like, say, most of the notes on the staff, reading intervals, and basic rhythms, and even slightly more complicated rhythms. So by the time that you get all that out of the way and you hit grade 3, the first intermediate level, you can start focusing a little bit more on theory and history and interpretation instead of just like constantly drilling rhythms and note reading. Basically everything between grade 3 and 6 is considered to be an intermediate level, and then once you hit grade 7, that's when things start getting more advanced. Grade 3 RCM and grade 3 ABRSM are roughly equivalent in how difficult they are on the level, which is why I'm doing a combined video of both of them. So for grade 3 RCM exams, you need to prepare 5 pieces. So 2 of those are Etudes, which are studies, and then 3 of them are repertoire, so like your actual pieces. And then ABRSM is the same, except you don't do Etudes. You just do 3 pieces, only the main pieces, no Etudes. The RCM and ABRSM both have 3 categories for pieces at this level. They have a List A, List B, and List C category. So we're going to start by talking about the List A category. So List A pieces in the RCM are Baroque dances. So Baroque, that was between the mid-1600s to the early 1700s. We've done videos on the Baroque period if you want more details. But anyway, you got a bunch of minuets because minuets are some of the easiest dances to play. But you also have other dance styles like a gavotte, a bourrée, a musette, and so on. This is also a perfect time to pick up the notebook for Anna Magdalena Bach, which is basically like the Bach gateway. This is the easiest Bach that you can buy, and it's a good way to, gradually increase your Bach etude, before you get into the little preludes and stuff like that. Some of the easiest pieces in this book start at a grade 3 level, and then they progressively get more difficult all the way up to like a grade 6 or grade 7 level. So this is a book that can have some lasting power in your repertoire. Now, these Baroque dances, beyond Bach, like all of them, are written in contrapuntal style, which just means that it's 2-voice style. There's 2 independent melodies that are being played simultaneously. So it's a little bit more of a hand independence workout. In the ABRSM, List A merges both Baroque and classical eras. So you get some dances just like you do with the RCM by Haydn, CPE Bach, and Scarlatti, and some other guys. But you'll also see the first Clementi sonatina in this group, which we're going to talk about in a second here. And I just want to make a note too. I say this every time I do a video like this, but List A is almost always the most, it depends, List B gets difficult too, but List A is almost always the most difficult for most students because classical and Baroque pieces are the oldest styles we learn on the piano. And because they're the oldest, they're the most unfamiliar. And they usually also require the most dexterity and hand independence to do right. So next up are the List Bs. So first of all, in the RCM, this is going to mean classical and classical style music. This is actually the first grade that the RCM splits the Baroque and classical into 2 separate categories, which ABRSM doesn't do in this grade. So there's a few different styles of pieces in this category, but really importantly, it includes the main feature, I think, of grade 3 piano, which is the sonatina. I think that sonatinas are way too difficult to begin before grade 3 level. Some people like to get into them right away, but I do disagree with that because they require a blend of really important skills and techniques like, being able to do fluent scale passages. There's cadences, and you need to be able to kind of understand the theory of cadences. And then there's all those difficult and quick classical accompaniment styles like Alberti bass, just as a random famous example. So starting in grade 3, we can begin to study Clementi's super famous Opus 36 sonatinas. And this is the easiest one in this collection is the first one. So that's, it's a big project for most students, but it's really, really rewarding. When I was first learning piano, I was always really frustrated by the challenges of classical era music, like sonatas and sonatinas, because they were challenging, right? These were the pieces that I tended to procrastinate on. But once I was able to play them, I usually found them to be like super fun because they have a lot of variety. There's a bunch of changing parts and they're really, really fast. So that could be fun too. So they take a while to perfect, but I do think that sonatas and sonatinas end up being really awesome show-off pieces. Just kind of showing you pages from the syllabus here. The ABRSM's List B choices are a little bit different. So since List A encompassed the Baroque and Classical periods, the List B is Romantic era music, so 19th century. Romantic era music is usually really loved because it's expressive. There's like, interesting titles like Witch's Dance, which is a bit of a comparison from less exciting titles like Minuet. And finally, we have the List Cs. These are pretty similar between the RCM and ABRSM, so I lumped them all together on the page here. They both focus on 20th and 21st century modern pieces. So it's in this category that you're going to come across the modern genres like jazz and blues. You're going to find mood pieces and character pieces and pieces with strange titles and really abstract pieces and all kinds of different things. So this is the category for music by people like Christopher Norton, Martha Muir, Mike Schoenmel, and others who are some of my favorite modern composers. The RCM requires a 4th and 5th piece to be learned, and these are called studies or etudes. And what these are designed around are a specific technical concept. So when you're learning an etude, it's going to surround itself with like one technique to build. So like maybe it's about light staccatos, maybe it's about working with fifths or chromatic scale passages and, different stuff like that. Etudes can be old pieces like from the 1700s, but they could also be modern by guys like Christopher Norton. And they could be anything from, super weird and quirky sounding to more traditionally musical. The 5th and optional category in grade 3 piano and any RCM piano, this is RCM only, not ABRSM, is pop music. And a lot of people omit this category, but I think it's worth a look because it allows you to substitute one of your etudes for a pop song. And there's like a short list, and I'm just gonna like flip ahead to level 3. You can kind of see there's a really big mix of everything from Broadway to, Eleanor Rigby to modern stuff like Frozen, and then there's like classic rock and all kinds of things like that. And I mean, you might be thinking like, oh, pop music, this is gonna be super easy because I know it on the radio, but a lot of the times it's not, because sometimes these pop songs have really complicated rhythms. They're almost always a little bit longer, like, maybe some of your other pieces are 1 page, but these ones could be like 2 to 4 pages. But you can balance that with the fact that they're fun to learn. So it's something to consider. So anyway, that covers, in a nutshell, every repertoire selection for an exam, if you're doing RCM or ABRSM. And you don't have to use this as an exam reference. If you don't do exams, that's fine. You can still kind of use this as a general idea of what different categories there are and what different song types and piece types that you're expected to know. So anyway, let's go move on to the other important categories. So next in order of importance is technique. In the RCM, grade 3 is the first grade that you're expected to do 2-octave, like hands together scales, which is a little bit of a learning curve at first. Before this, it was all hands separate. So aside from those new scales and triads and formula patterns in different keys, the only other new thing to the RCM technique in grade 3 are 2-octave triads. So it's still hand separate, HS for hand separate, but instead of going 1 octave like you did in grade 1 and 2, now you're going to go 2 octaves. In the ABRSM for grade 3, you need to be able to play your scales hands together and separately. So that's actually what you did in grade 2 in ABRSM, so it's not a major change. The other major change, well, I guess really the only other major change is that there are now some hands together arpeggios, which are a little more challenging. So we've talked about the repertoire, we've talked about the technique, and that's going to make up the majority of your learning and your practice, but there are 2 more important categories that I don't want to overlook, and that is sight reading and ear training. So sight reading, I've got the RCM up right here. Basically, it just involves reading a little bit of a song, like a little bit of a piece and a fragment on the piano off the cuff. Like the examiner will pop some music in front of you, give you a few seconds, and then, you know, you're off to the races. The RCM sight reading for this level is actually, I think, quite a bit easier than the ABRSM at this level. You only have to do a 4-measure passage, whereas in the ABRSM, you have to do a playback up to 8 measures, and you're going to be using slightly more unusual keys than these. Like you could have to, you know, read a piece in E flat major, for example. But with the RCM, you have the additional hurdle of doing a sort of a rhythm reading. So the examiner will put a rhythm in front of you, and you're gonna have to, like, you know, tap your toes a steady beat, and then, you know, with your hands, you're going to have to tap like the rhythm that you're reading in front of you. So you have to read a rhythm and you have to read a piece of music on the piano. Then we have the ear test. So in the RCM, you have to listen to the examiner play something and clap back the rhythm. And you're going to have to be able to identify these different interval distances. So like minor and major thirds, perfect fourths and fifths. And you're going to have to be able to tell the difference between major and minor chords and be able to tell if, you know, they're playing a root note or a third or the fifth of the chord. They're going to play like an individual note after they do the chord. And you have to do a playback. So that just means the examiner plays something and then you have to copy it back. For the ABRSM, it's pretty different actually. I mean, you have to clap back a tune, and that's pretty similar, but you also have to do a sing back where you echo a tune that the examiner plays, just as kind of like a pitch challenge. They'll also do they'll play something twice and they'll change something the second time, and you need to figure out what they've changed. And then you're also going to need to, you don't have to do a playback like with the RCM, but you do have to do a listening exercise where they're going to play something and then they're going to ask you questions about it. So finally, I want to finish by talking about percentages, and we're going to start with the RCM and then we'll look at the ABRSM. This is really, really, really similar. Actually, it might even be identical if I'm remembering correctly to grade 2. So if you remember that video, we're going to kind of be looking at the same thing. So in RCM, all of your pieces are worth 56%, and they're pretty equal. Your list A and C are worth 16%, and then your list B is worth 18%, to a total of almost your entire a passing grade, which is 60. Your technique is out of 24%, so that's 12% for all the scales and stuff, and then the 2 studies are worth 12% each. And then you have ear test and sight reading, which are each worth 10%, and a passing grade is 60%. The main difference between this and the RCM is the total marks are out of 150, whereas with the RCM, the total marks are out of 100, okay? So you have 3 pieces which are each worth 30 marks. So all of them together are going to be 60% of your overall grade. And then your scales and stuff, 14%. Sight reading is 14%, and ear tests are 12%. So the weighting is actually, the weight of the marks are a little bit different than the RCM. Okay, let's just take a look at the syllabus one more time here before we wrap this up. I just want to show you, there's, in the syllabus, I'm looking at the RCM one right now, but the same is true with ABRSM. There is a big song list of all the different pieces you can play that are at a grade 3 level in each category, like list A, list B, list C. So check that out if you're looking for new pieces to learn. And there's a couple different things you can do. You can buy the specific grade 3 RCM or ABRSM books, because they have like a nice diverse collection of all the pieces, and then you don't have to like pick and choose. You don't have to, you know, spend a bunch of time figuring out what pieces that you can learn, because they're all going to be in one book and they're all going to be at the right level. And here's what that looks like in the ABRSM. You have a way smaller song list choice. So even if you're just doing an ABRSM exam, I would still encourage you to look at the RCM syllabus, just if you're looking for more pieces to learn. It'll give you a few more options that you know are going to be at the right level. So the other thing you can do, if you don't want to buy the RCM or ABRSM books, like the official books, what you can do is you can buy the individual books that some of these pieces come from. So for example, you're like, man, I really like Anne Crosby. She's pretty cool. And she has a book called In My Dreams. And all 4 of these pieces from In My Dreams are at a grade 3 level. So you might want to buy that book, or you might want to buy, I don't know, Lyric Waltzes by Glenda Austin or whatever. I really like doing that because it'll lead to a more interesting piano book collection, which I think is kind of fun. And it also helps to diversify just beyond the standard pieces provided in the grade 3 books. And that is all for today's video. I hope you found this useful. I kind of made this video with the intention of, if you're doing a grade 3 exam, you can kind of review this to make sure you're on the right track with everything. Maybe it'll give you an idea of some pieces you want to learn. But even if you're not doing exams, I feel like it's kind of helpful to have a sense of where you are. So even for my students who don't do exams, I like to give them a sense of what grade level they're working through and kind of still go through the grades. It's like, I kind of like treating piano a little bit like school in that regard, because I feel like it's nice to have that sense of structure. So anyway, I will wrap this up here. You can come hang out with me on social. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, and we're linked below in there if you want to, come hang out. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. You can give it a like if you enjoyed it. Thank you for everyone who helped make these videos possible. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you guys next time. What does the A stand for? Advanced Backed Royal Conservatory of Music. No. Okay, I don't know.